country like Kenya has been subjected to, the country of the United Kingdom would cease to exist. I think we have a much bigger skunk here, and that might explain the very serious desperation on the part of government. So let us be focused. Let us not do small demonstrations. I don't believe in those small numbers things. Let's do 800K. Let these people put their weapons down and say, okay, now it is like for like. Tumewasikia. Now we must go by how you guys are saying under Article 1.1. That is, if we don't feel we're hitting that target, let us not then go to the street. That's unpopular to say, but this thing of a flurry of guys here, 37 guys here, 140 guys on this side, etc. Let us consolidate 800,000 people in Nairobi. Let us march to KICC and fill it, and Uhuru Park, and we stay there. God bless Kenya. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much, Benji, and thanks everyone who's listening. As we proceed, I would like to bring on board ladies also to speak. We will restrict to 2 minutes per person who are going to, share about, how you think we can make the plans concrete. And if you have questions to the main speaker, Daktari Miguna and Caswell, please do that. The reason why we are restricting to 2 minutes each is because we've had several times where speakers are not able to speak and they keep inboxing and saying we were not able to speak. So for the sake of fairness, if you're still waiting and you've been able to speak on the panel the past 2 to 3 times, kindly allow those who haven't yet had a chance to also have a chance to speak. Chika Freak, over to you.
Is she speaking much? I can't hear.
She's opened her mic, but I cannot hear her. Chika Freak, are you able to hear us? Okay. As we wait for her to settle, Dr. Majus, kindly proceed. 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, our speaker today, Miguna and Makoure. I have some little to put across. Things have been said here. I heard Dr. Miguna talked about how we are going to do an overhaul, including the old politicians, if I put it in a simple terms. So I will ask him on that. By the time he will be responding, to tell us, we here to build more enemies because we are in a war, guys, that people are planning for us. People are regrouping and want to make sure that we go nowhere. That's why you see a big coalition now. Raila and the president is now in one language. And if you do some analysis since the nomination of a new cabinet, people are speaking a different language. There are a good number that is speaking against the Gen Z. We might say that we are partyless, and I want to tell you, guys, we have been given a party or branded a party, Gen Zs, and whoever is addressing anything that you are doing, we have been given a party or a name, Gen Zs, so we have been grouped in that name. Second to that, there is something that we must ask ourselves about a party. Can we form a party if even if it is not now, then in future? How can we use this? We are dealing with that we cannot run away from. Don't win now. The revolution come with time. Revolution takes time, and Rome also was not built in a day. How are we going to deal with that? Second to that, these people have now come, they are out. You can see Ruto is walking everywhere to try to encounter what we have done for the last 1 month. How are we going to for this cabinet that was appointed that are just about to go to the parliament? Can we put our focus to the parliament so that we weaken parliament? I remember during
Kingsman.
yes.
Okay. Can you
Hello.
Marge?
Dr. Mijus, thanks. Let me interrupt you for 1 minute. Minutes that we are giving per speaker. After 1 minute, I'm going to raise my hand. So please look at my profile picture or any other of the co-host. If a hand is raised, it means you have 1. Then Susan, and then either Caswell or Dr. Miguna can chime in on that. So
Thank you. Thank you. I'm up again. I was requesting that can we take our direction direct to the members of parliament, just like we did it during finance bill. I remember we were everywhere for these members of parliament to an extent that you can remember about the coalition government during Raila and Kibaki. Raila
okay,
weekend
so
the
Dr.
government.
Majus, you will now have to land. We have to really be considerate of others. So please land, and then you go to
Thank you,
Kathy.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you,
No,
thank you,
just
thank you.
finalize your statement, and then we go to the next.
We remember by that time, Raila used that to weaken the government of coalition, whereby he will be consulted. And that's the formula that the government of Ruto and Uhuru used when they were stealing votes from all the way from the MPs to the president. And again, that's what the Kenya Kwanza has used during this time to make sure they have numbers all the way from the MPs to the president, so that there is no way you can handle him down. There is no way you can make the president toothless. But when we weaken the parliament, the president will remain toothless, and there are people we can reach out and we weaken as strong as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So because 2 minutes are not really much, to the speakers who are going to follow, kindly try to structure your speech in a way that you're able to deliver them in 2 minutes. We really understand, but we want to also be fair to those who haven't spoken. Susan, and then Chick Afrik, and then we can have Kasamuel and Dr. chime in. Susan? Oh, Susan, are you able to
I can't hear.
speak? Susan Jefferson. Okay, if you're not able to, let's go to Chick Afrik. Chick Afrik, can you please unmute your mic? Okay, Susan, if you're not speaking,
hello.
we're going to drop you. Yeah, hello, kindly proceed.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Good afternoon, comrades. Mine is very brief. I just want us to make a few, observations of what's going on since President appointed his cabinet. So now he feels very energized. He feels like he's got a bit of energy around him now that he's brought other people on board. And he's going around and promising new developments and saying, oh, we're going to do this, so that he can, appease the masses. I think what we should do in every constituency, in every ward, we need to also look at what has been going on since he took power. We need to look at the underdevelopment, things like schools, hospitals, roads, and all the infrastructure in our wards. We need to document these, and we need to counter all these things that he's talking about, saying that he has done this, he will do this. We need to come out clear and say the reason why we're saying you should go is because your government has failed. Look at the state of our schools. We put pictures on there. Look at the state of our hospitals. We put pictures on social media, and we share widely, even with international bodies, so that when we are talking about the failures of this government, we are also documenting what is actually happening on the ground. When he says that he's appointing these people, we need to start looking at their track record. So people like former governors, we can look at the infrastructure in the counties where they were governors and say, you're saying these people are going to, bring changes to this country. This is what was the state of affairs in the counties they led. So how then are we going to see more changes or more development in the country if these are the people you're bringing on board? And then finally, we also need to think about moving forward, because I think these X spaces are very, very good. But we also need to be conscious of the fact that the intelligence services, the police service, and all these, they're having, intelligence of plans that we're making. All the plans we have beforehand, they already have everything, and therefore they're able to plan against anything that we plan. So I don't know whether we can, have other ways of, keeping some of the things that we're planning under wraps so that on the day we, come up with things that they were not actually aware of. Because at the moment, if we say nane nane, that's very good. But then if we put everything out there, they will be very, very prepared against any plans that we have. So I think moving forward, we need to have other spaces where we can actually have a smaller group of people who can then refine the plans that have been made and then decimate that in other ways other than not on the space. That's all I have to say. And thank you very much for organizing these spaces. They're very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chika Freak. Let's go to Professor Fred and then Dr. Ari and Caswell.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because of time, I will just go back straight to the point. I have the following point is that, first of all, we are very happy that the right diagnostic was done and that the right diseases were discovered. And these diseases are leadership, because we have a president who has no vision for the country. Governance is a problem because we have no accountability, no oversight. And lastly, people want economic liberation. So broad-based government is not the medication for that problem. So we won't care. So we have done as, let's say, Linda Jami, because I've been in this activism for some time. I'm just trying to say some of the contribution we are making, which actually answers some of the concerns. One, on Wednesday last week, we launched a petition that will be giving High Court a chance to interpret how Ruto can go to office. I know that we are doing some on the ground, Mandamano, but we want to give Ruto air, land, and sea attack. So we are attacking from all directions, but the point is the target is William Ruto. So let's not be distracted. The common enemy is William Ruto. So we have to attack him all direction, in court, everywhere. I'm sure it will overwhelm him. So the other thing is that we have a bill to amend the constitution that will also give us a legal infrastructure procedure on how Ruto can leave office without having to go to the street. That is for prosperity and also prosperity. So that will also be something we are doing. The third thing is that tomorrow I'm putting a petition in High Court to declare that protected areas in government is unconstitutional. Those things were passed by acts of parliament, but they aren't constitutional, because saying no one can go to State House, which is the key decisions that are killing Kenyans, is made. The head of state is a symbol of unity. Why should his residence be a place where you cannot go? And it actually kills the freedom of movement. So that petition is very good. If anybody is interested, you can just DM me. I'll send you the petition, but I'm going to file it tonight. Then tomorrow, I'm going to give a press statement about what it is going to do. But I find it really earth-shaking, because if we ensure that the court can declare that there is no unprotected areas during Mandamano, like I'm trying to say, everyone in all my tenants in my house have rights to their privacy. But if they're smoking weed inside my residential houses, then I have a right to go and check whether they're smoking. So William Ruto is smoking weed inside there, and you have to check. So the fourth strategy, which I want us to think about, is that we have not done well because we are allowing the media to be the one feeding us with current affairs. How can the Gen Z movement start driving the media agenda? I'm sure they are hitting headline, but the conversation is still about, oh, William Ruto or Raila Odinga. I'm sure that there is a need for us to come with a media strategy to start now directing the conversation around what we are trying to do, even defining what Gen Z is all about, not them trying to define us on their own ways. And I'm trying to say that what we need to do, if I now respond to what Miguna and Kasmuela was talking about, we have to sit down and diagnose properly what is keeping Ruto in power, not his cabinet for sure, not even the PSS. So we have to diagnose and come up with those things, whether there are three or four. What is keeping Ruto in power? One of them is the money he's collecting. And we even have a petition again in court trying to talk about how some money he's signing appropriation act are constitutional, and that petition we're also going to hear it soon, is in very advanced stage. What are the options we have to dismantle the forces that are keeping Ruto in power? Strategically, I like what Tony Gachok has said, that there are a series of battles we have to win. Some we have to lose, some will remain neutral. We have to win most of the battles that are keeping Ruto in power. Then what will it take to bring him down? And somebody talks about agreeing on a 7 days of rage where we are going to go in large numbers and bring him down. And I want to say that I want to respond as a speaker who spoke. That's my last submission. According to me, as a strategist, because this is what I earn my money on, when you have a dominant strategy, even if the opponent knows, you'll beat them. And according to us, there must be some things we know that if we do them, whether they know we shall do them, we will do them anyway because we have power and we have the ease of execution. So, according to me, they have to know, but then we have to do them in a way that even if they know, they can't counteract it. Ronaldo had one style of dribbling in football, but before you realize he has dribbled you with the same style, he used to have only one style, and he works it out with speed and surprise. So speed and surprise should be a strategy that no one can always beat. So long as I have speed and surprise, you can't beat me, even if you know I'll use speed and surprise, because the speed and surprise will happen. As far as I'm concerned, no one should be giving up because this war will win it. And we need to work together as a team. And if we work together as a team with the focus we have, let us not have too many enemies or going to counties and senators because Ruto likes it when we are distracted. Let us just focus on the man and hit him hard using air, sea, and land. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have one question to you before we proceed to General and Casmuel. Just for the sake of civic education, would you kindly list all the areas that are currently regarded as protected? Back to you.
Protected areas are 12 state houses and state lodges, which is Nairobi State House. And we wrote a letter asking the Inspector General, Regional Commander, and then the police OCS in those stations asking them, we want to bring our petition on 30th of July. And they responded in a letter saying, we cannot do it. So we have gathered those affidavits we are taking to court to interpret whether they have the powers to stop us. The other one is Parliament. They say Parliament is a protected area, so you cannot be able to go. And all those things are all unconstitutional because they were passed through acts of Parliament that never really had a thinking in the constitution we have in Constitution of Kenya 2010. The other ones we have them are just they can talk about the issue of vigilance house. They are just actually named in this act. But for us, we are targeting the 12 where we have Sagana, the one in Nyeri, we have Kisumu, we have Mombasa, we have Kitale, we have Kakamega, we have Nairobi, and then I think Kisii also we have. So they are just 12, and we want just to ensure that they can be allowed at a proximal distance to issue a petition to the president. And I'm sure that's where, if they can be able to, the court can rule we have that power. And one of the orders we're asking the court to ask Inspector General to explain to us how can the citizens be able to hand over their petition to State House, because all decisions that are hurting Kenyans are made right there. Why are we wasting time on going to other places, which is not important? So they're just like that. And I'm sure that maybe I can share with Hillary, who is the host here, that petition tomorrow morning, because it has got a listed all that. Because of time, I don't want to spend everybody's time in listing. Thank you very much, co-host.
Thanks so much, Fred. Hilary, do you want to say
No, I
something?
was saying thank you so much, Prof, for coming and also for sharing that idea. And let us have that. You can share with me on my DM or my number. Then will see how to spread it out. Thank you so much. I've seen Prof has joined the conversation. Prof Kibuta Kibuta, we really welcome you on board. Thank you much.
Thanks. So let's give Caswell the chance to chime in. Then we go to Prof. Kibwana, and then General can also then answer questions that have been shared until now. Then we speak the next set of speakers. Caswell, over to you.
Thank you, Madge. As we just keep on focusing on Nane Nane, because it is going to be, I think, a declaration of a collective declaration of what it is that we believe in. I think it is important for us to also remind ourselves of why exactly we're doing this. We're not doing this as a recreational activity. We're not doing this as an attention-seeking stunt. We're not doing this because other countries are doing it. We're doing it because we feel like enough is enough in this country. We've seen that there's a systemic rot, and it's a system that needs to be overhauled. So we're not, and personally, I'm not being gentle about the fact that these systems do not work. It's not about installing people or instituting people in offices that do not work, in offices order of the day is corruption, in offices which you do not have autonomy, where if you're not controlled, you cannot week. That's why I'm saying it is very important for us to, one, come to the collective conscience, but also speak to the people on ground, because currently, as we're holding the spaces, the president is also holding a campaign trail, because if you listen to whatever it is that's happening on that trail, it quite literally is just a campaign, and it's almost as if it's trying to allay the fears of the people. But we do not have a problem with an individual, because even if we had a functioning if even if we have we remove an individual from office and replace him with a principled man, that would still be a problem. What we're calling for with this hashtag Ruto must go is a total overhaul of the system. We are not trying to have these broad-based conversations as they would have it, thinking in political factions, thinking of, we're just saying that this does not work. It is a total rethink of how we think of democracy and how we think of this country in terms of our independence. We still have a police force and not a police service. We still have corruption being the order of the day. We still have government official trading with their family members. Those kinds of things that we have said time without number are still going on. So as we go into Nane Nane, part of what we need to remember is we are not just trying to do a thing. It's not a retaliation. This is a conceptualization of the future we want. This is a rewriting of history as we would have it. When the colonialists were here, the Mau Mau said enough is enough, and they forged their future. And the various revolutions that have happened throughout time. This is us saying, from today henceforth, this is a system that we will want to work. It is not, a lot of people are trying to make it look as though we want to ban the country. And even if you think about the comparisons that they're making, it's just comparisons to try and instill fear. You've seen a lot of people who wanted to take advantage of the movement now gain their voices. You've seen goons come on the streets and abduct people and arrest and even beat and maim people. But you've also seen such enormous displays of confidence from various factions. I never thought that you could hold on to your comrade to ensure that they're not taken into police custody, into those tracks. I didn't know that it was not mandatory for anyone to be there. It's just that they have brutalized us and beaten. They want to beat us into submission and fear so badly, so that we lose our psyche and our collective desire for a better country. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice, whatever it is that we're doing is a total rewrite of what we want to see as a country. And I'm urging you not to give up. I'm urging you not to be afraid. I'm urging you not to feel discouraged because you're seeing that it seems as though some people are winning. Nobody is winning. We are saving this government from itself. People are trying to make it look as though we are trying to humiliate anybody. We are not trying to humiliate anybody. We are trying to say that we are tired of Kenya being compared to other countries. We want to write a story that works and functions for our country. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice, do not think that for a moment we are trying to oust a person so that we install a person that we love. No, we are inviting you to a total rethinking of this system. That is what we mean by Ruto must go. It means all elements of Rutoism, that all elements of corruption, all elements of cultism. It could be on Dingaism, Kenyattaism, Uhuruism, Kibakiism, all the isms that have bedeviled this country before. Those are the things we're saying we want to reimagine. So nobody has monopoly over the answer to the question, what next? What next will depend with what you decide to do from today. In as we marshal for Nane Nane, communities and informing them that this is exactly what we are going to do. If we leave that responsibility to only one person, that's when you try and see them try and impose a leader on you. Like I've said numberless times, I am not a leader. I'm not a leader for this movement. I am a leader in my own right, but I'm not a leader for the movement. But everyone is trying to narrow down this movement to certain individuals. But this is an awakening of the entire country's conscience. It is not limited to Gen Z. It is a Kenyan political activity that we are undertaking and saying, this is not right, it's not working for us, and we have to rethink it. So if you're here and you keep on asking yourself, so what next? There's no time, because we are at the tipping point where we have the opportunity to rewrite the Kenyan narrative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caswell. Just two questions before we proceed. Do you think the other generations, especially the older generation, understand what you need or what you communicate? Question number one. And question number two, what would you then tell them? For example, if you could tell the first, I think he's dropped. Okay, I cannot see him anymore. I think he'll come back. I'll keep the questions for him when he comes back. Professor, over to you. Professor Kivuta, Kibwana? Oh, Caswell is back. Okay, Caswell, you dropped. But the question is, now I've heard what you said, I've had the points that you have really communicated. So now I'm just flipping it a little bit. So I want now your perception. What's your perception about how the other, especially the older generation, perceive what you say? Yesterday or the days ago, I was taught that I had a Gen Z come on a space and say Gen Z now means generation zote. Yeah. But again, back to you. Do you feel understood? One. Two, what would be the 10 things saying, now you can use, let's say just use Marge. Marge, I expect A, B, C, least even 5. Back to you.
Thank you, Madge. I think the psyche of the people understand whatever the psyche of the movement is. It's it's just that it is out of the ordinary. When people hear change is going to come, we usually feel that change is driven by one person. We usually feel as though change is driven by one political party, and that is what has always been happening. We have always been in a situation of a false dilemma in this country, but this is a time where we're saying that yes, you people are clamoring and saying that you're making the changes, but it seems as though we are rejecting everything. And when people look at it, they say these people are ungrateful and whatnot. It's because people are forced into a false dilemma. Based on the people I have met, based on the conversations I have had with people on the ground in terms of civic education, because I believe this thing we have to do it everywhere, on the front of the protests, in the media, and more importantly, in the communities. The people are slowly trying to starting to understand whatever it is that we are about, and and part of that, it gives me so much hope. But then if we all do not play our parts in being very vocal about this and owning this. If we allow ourselves to fall back to the traditional false dilemma that we always are, and we're like, so only one name has to rise out of a movement, we run the risk of cheapening what this thing is. Because even if you see whatever is happening currently, people are trying to shift the conversation from the issues to individuals. And I'm very happy that the people understand this, but also the government is doing, and the establishment, if I may, is doing its best to ensure that people are still misinformed, and people still they're trying to make it look as though it's government versus opposition. And even if you see the way people present the wording, they're like it's anti-government or whatever, those kinds of things. But luckily the people are kind of seeing through the ruse. It's still work in progress that needs to be done, and it's a change that's going to come either way, because the young people who are leaderless, tribeless, fearless, understand what this cause is about. And I know that we will bring about and midwife this change. Two, on agenda, I think it is very clear that we want a Kenya that works for all of us. And we don't need to belabor this point that we want a police service, not a police force, that we want a functional government that's rid of corruption. But a lot of these things we will be able to establish them in a different and a new system, in a total overhaul of this system. That's why I'm not even too keen on stating demands, because I know, even if the question seems as though it leans towards what are the fixes that we can make, it feels as though we might need to make demands upon the current existing system. And we are saying that system does not work because it is laden with corrupt officials, and the corruption goes so deep that for us to deal with it, if we were to think about just sentencing a few people, getting a few heads rolling, we will still be in the same position in 3 years. We will still be in facing these same challenges. So a lot of it is in thinking about what does a new Kenya look like. We know that in the root, at the very, very base of the root, we have a problem with corruption. We have a problem with individuals acting as states and auctioning our future. We have a problem with bad governance and lack of accountability. These 4 things explain all the problems, all the lists which we could talk about. But the only way we deal with them at the root level is by actualizing Nane Nane and saying we are inviting the whole country to rethink what leadership looks like, what governance looks like, what public healthcare looks like, what finance looks like, what debt looks like for this country. So I think limiting it to a few reforms would seem as though we are petitioning the existing system. We're asking our oppressor to find different ways to oppress us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Casmel. That's really well noted, and the point has arrived home. I would like to say that I think days ago there was an interview you did and you were mistreated. I would like to state that this is a safe space and nobody's going to ask questions that are leading towards narratives that we do not know who is pushing for. This is a safe space to every speaker coming to speak. Even if you're asked a question, feel free to only answer questions that you want to answer. No. As we move on, Professor, kindly take onto the mic. There's an important question I wanted to put your way. The last few days, I've been seeing a lot of bashing going on of youths who are assumed to be, trying to make money, and then there's something like paid activism. So how can we also inform people that for example, Amnesty International has employees, and all these employees are employed. As a very respectable senior citizen of the country, I believe you've also seen these things go on. What steps can we take to also educate and avoid such scenarios, because they have been really demoralizing the young people? There's a lady who shared a photo of a fridge, what's it called, magnet, and all hell broke loose. So there are people fighting for change, but the people are jobless. But anytime they see somebody who has an idea that could bring in money, it's already just being pushed back. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Marge and Hilary, Kingsman, and the General, and even the CAS General, Professor,
I can't hear anything.
Migai.
Oh,
Yeah, Professor Kibwana is speaking. Terry, probably if you could just try to leave and come back, we can. Can you hear me, Terry?
I can hear you, but I can't hear Professor Kibwana.
Okay, let him proceed. If after 1 minute you can still not hear him, then kindly leave and come back. Back to you, Professor.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, but
Okay.
General cannot hear you. Dr. Miguna, can you? Yeah, okay. Then he's just left. He's coming back because it would be really unfortunate if he cannot hear you the whole time. Let's hope he will then hear you when he comes back. Kindly proceed.
Yes, thank you very much for all colleagues who are on this space. I think, first of all, I wanted to say, because I know there is a time constraint, but I wanted to say we must emphasize to the young people that they have really done us proud, because there is an attempt to demoralize them, to make them appear as if all their gains have been in vain. And I think there is one of the papers where I saw their work being characterized as Pyrrhic victory, a victory without victory. They actually forced the president to dissolve the cabinet of his choice. They forced him to withdraw the finance bill, even if still that is not clear what exactly is happening afterwards. But in other countries, when you withdraw a finance bill, you actually resign. They have gotten the opposition and the government to come together. Otherwise, if it was not the effort, these two groups may not have come together in the way in which clearly that they have come together. They have told Kenya that we must detribalize ourselves and be tribeless, and began to put in the mind of Kenyans that fundamental change is possible. So I think we need to emphasize that these young people have done not only Kenya but Africa proud, and they are even being kind of copied elsewhere to bring about the fundamental change that we are thinking of our country and our continent. And listening to Samuel, he actually summarized that they want a clean Kenya based on the constitution and servant leadership that works for all. And that's a very simple message that I had him put on the table, plus also in their conversations and in these spaces that exist. And I think listening to Miguna saying that there's to be a sustained struggle so that the fruit that is expected is born. That is not inconsistent with Nane Nane, which is very robust. And then as it unfolds, there is work towards sustaining this struggle so that it achieves this result of fundamental change, because that's a very, very important point. If we do not uproot what has been there from colonialism and these 60 plus years, so that actually one of the things that should happen is to say, what is the Kenya that we want? And there's to be a space where that is thought through. We have all these, professors, activists, and economists, and whoever, political scientists, and everybody, so that we actually say that, like there was Vision 2030, this is the new vision. And if this vision is achieved, then there's going to be systemic change, and that becomes very, very, very important. And I think these minimum demands of the Gen Zs when they said, drop finance bill, bring good cabinet and all kind of stuff, they need to be concretized so that now there is something that says it is this, it is this, it is this, it is this, not because that is the main point, but to be able to juxtapose it with what the president and his guys are doing to show that even those minimum demands are being kind of subverted. But that is also quite important. And I think as we conclude, there has to be now focus main demands, like implement the constitution, not mutilate it, because already we are hearing of another BBA, another NADCO and stuff like that. That's a very important thing, because they are trying to look at how do they get prime minister, deputy prime minister, those positions, so that they can do their coalition now and share positions ethnically. So implement the constitution, not mutilate it. No more loans without our approval. And it was said that if people don't get money, the leadership doesn't get money so that it can, pay out to this opposition and so on, then it means that their maneuvering is restricted. So I think that is something that we need to focus on, and to actually focus on the civic education, especially rural Gen Z and rural populations. Also create a mentorship for the leadership like this from MCA, all these young people now who need to get into the leadership from MCA up to the president. We have a mentorship program, and I think that this debate, that this is not just a Gen Z movement, it is led and started with the Gen Zs in their totality. For all generations. I really like that. And finally, I think the Gen Zs must give the other generations the authority to be part of it, so that the other generations don't keep away saying that we think we are usurping what you are doing, so that when people are coming to participate, they feel that they are supportive, they are not usurping anything, they are broadening what has been begun by the young people, and then, so that the Gen Zs, the progressives, everybody feels that those who want better for Kenya, better for our young people and everybody, are comfortable to continue. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I must have done more than 2 minutes.
No, that's all right, Professor, because you're actually giving us your wisdom, so that's really perfectly welcome. Yeah, so over to you, General.
Thank you very much, Maj. And I thank Professor Kivuta Kibwana and Casmuel, um, um, Tony, everybody else who has spoken. I think that everyone has given very, very good ideas. I like it. I want to request the whole co-hosts to probably push NATO and Jerotich up there, because I see them down there. They were supposed to be speakers and I don't see them up. But that is as I continue. I want to focus on some of the questions that were asked before I make a comment. The question about the media, and whether or not there is something that we can do about the media to make our message, or the movement's message. I say our because this movement clearly cannot belong to any generation. I say that with all due respect, because there is no movement that arises out of a vacuum. All movements arise of social conditions that exist and that have existed historically since Kenya was created or was founded. And that throughout history, Kenyans have struggled for the same social issues that the Gen Zs are currently battling with. So there is no vacuum in the struggle, and there is no vacuum in terms of how this struggle has been fought throughout history. I was talking with Casmuel yesterday, and one of the things that we discussed was There were victims in 1963, 1964, throughout history up to today. So when we are talking about uh, justice for the victims, we cannot only just think about the victims of June 25th. We have to think holistically, historically, about all the victims, the Pio Pinto Gamas, the Tom Boyers, the Adwings Codex, the Ochukas, and more recently the Musandos, and the ones who died in 2018 when I was arrested, and the youth actually were demonstrating on the streets, and many were shot dead. Those people have not obtained justice. Or last year, when ODM was doing maandamano and many families lost loved ones. We must look at this thing holistically. But coming to the issue of the media, the mainstream media is owned by the people we are fighting against. So let us not be deceived. The Citizen media is owned by Royal Media Group, which is owned by S.K. Macharia, who was the chairman of the campaign committee of Raila Odinga. So when Raila Odinga joins Ruto in the illegitimate coalition, clearly Citizen will start siding with Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Hence, the mistreatment of Casmuel during yesterday's show. So we have to see this in context. When you look at The Nation, the editorial director of The Nation was paid school fees for by Raila Odinga. He has loyalty to Raila Odinga personally. So you don't expect the Daily Nation to start covering these things in a balanced way. Look at CNN. Who is the anchor or the reporter for CNN? Has done a great job so far, Larry Madowo. But what did he do in 2018 when I was trying to talk about revolution? He shut me up. These are people whose origins and DNA are rooted in the cabal system in Kenya that we need changed. So don't expect anything different from them. In any event, the social media is currently the leading media in the entire world, accounting for more than 80% of media traffic. So once we dominate the social media and we disseminate our information in the social media, we can disregard the mainstream media. We will still encourage people who are invited to go there and deconstruct them. But don't focus on the mainstream so called media. That media is dead and dying. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the issue that I don't know whether it was Professor Chieng, but he mentioned that they are having petitions and constitutional challenges in court and blah, blah, blah. And they want to amend the constitution to ensure that Ruto can go without anybody being on the street. With all due respect, a misguided and wrong-headed strategy. Law, and I'm talking here as a veteran lawyer of 30 years standing, law is an instrument of power. Power is not an instrument of law. So law and the judiciary serves the state. You don't expect an instrument of the state to declare that a regime should go home when that regime was elected, even if that regime becomes illegitimate before 2 years like this one. So going to court is wrong-headed when you are dealing with Article 1 of the Constitution, where the people have recalled the legitimacy they donated to the government in power. And they are saying they now want to exercise their sovereignty directly. Don't go to court for any interpretation of Article 1 because you will not win. No court will declare this government illegal. No court will tell Ruto to go home. If you are declaring such orders, we need to have you rebooted to the default because you're not going to get those orders. There is no court in the world that will give you those orders. So it's a waste of time. We need to focus our attention to what is important right now, which is the popular movement on the streets. Let's be very clear here. Because if we are not clear, we will not be able to achieve what actually is imminent. The current state, the current is inherently and incurably defective. So you cannot reform it. And when you look for court orders and you're looking for amendments, you're trying to reform this thing. It's like taking deodorant and using it on a skunk. The, the order that is going to come out of there is worse than the natural skunk, the order of the natural skunk. So let's not do it. The third point I wanted to make, there is nothing wrong with people saying we are anti-government. We are. We want Ruto to go with this government and this regime. So there's nothing wrong by people saying these things are anti-government demonstrations. Let's embrace that. Yes, they are inherently anti-government. If you are saying this government is incurably corrupt and incompetent and represents a system you want replaced, then you're anti that government. Let us not run away from what we are. Let's look at it as a badge of honor. We are anti-government. We want to replace it. We want it to go. How else do you say that? What we are not is that we are not calling for the military to take power. We are not calling for a faction of the regime to take power. We are saying all factions of this regime have to go home. The military has to stay in the barrack, and the civilians will sort out everything that we have to sort out. The third point, because I think a statement was made about this, I agree with the statement, but I don't think that we got it clearly what the financial and economic situation in the country is. I was telling someone yesterday that if you go to a bank and you want to take a loan or a mortgage, you want a house, they will do an analysis of what your income is and what your expenses are per month and then per year. And if the mortgage is going to take more than 40% of your income, you will not simply not qualify for the mortgage because you will have other things that you are going to take care of percent of revenue to pay foreign debt and mainly to pay interest. In fact, to pay exclusively interest, which means these are only interest-only loans. An interest-only loan is a loan where it doesn't matter how long you pay it, you will never be able to touch the principal, which means this debt is in perpetuity. It's an illegal debt because no debt should be in perpetuity. No mortgage runs more than 25 years. So anything that runs more than 25 years has to be legal. But they're telling us this is a debt anti into perpetuity. Then they're telling us if you take 65% to service the interest, what is left there? What is left there is 35%, right? This 35% is not just going into development. In fact, zero goes into development because it 30% goes to recurrent expenditure, the salaries, the benefits, the per diems, the 200 million Ruto tax for jets to Washington, their first lady's office, the second lady, the third lady, the first daughter, whatever you want to call them. So then the country gets zero towards development. I'm not even talking about what is stolen. I'm now only talking about what they are saying. Then you have to account for the 2 billion per month that Despot Uhuru said was being stolen every month from our money. Then you know this is what anarchy looks like. They were saying it is the Gen Zs and the patriotic revolutionaries on the streets that were calling for chaos and anarchy. But what do you call this? This is economic anarchy. Because if you cannot come out of the debt trap and you cannot put any money towards development, then how can this be sustainable? How can anybody say this economy will create jobs? This economy will give us universal health care. This economy will be able to provide for quality education. This economy will be able to build roads. All these things they are telling us is just being done on credit. So all this is debt. Yet, the same people are telling us, and the Auditor General has told us, and other investigative forensic experts have told us, more than 2.5 trillion was stolen in the last 10 years and is sitting in offshore accounts. And they don't want to go get that so that they can clear the debt and be able to develop our country. And this is deliberate. So when you see Raila and the rest joining in with grade D former governors, some of whom are in court for corruption, such as Oparanya, they want to support each other because without this system that is incurably defective and cannot be reformed, they cannot survive. That is why an overhaul is inevitable. An overhaul is the only thing that can be done and must be done. I like what Benji Ndolo said, that we target even 800,000. That's a lot of people. But as much as 5 million or 10 million, because everybody in Kenya is tired. It is not right to say that that's all we can be able to gather, because as Ndolo correctly said, Martin Luther King gathered 1 million before Kenya got its independence. So if he was able to gather 1 million, there was no social media. And he was not even as organic, that organization, as this one. And the situation was dire, yes, but it was a different century altogether, almost. It was many, many decades ago. How can we fail in this day and age to be able to have even 5 million people in Nairobi when we are organized, when we can get together and hire buses and matatus, when we can loan each other money so that they can get transportation, when we can accommodate each other, when we can source for support from others who are as disgusted as we are towards this regime. We cannot fail. What I want to emphasize is that we cannot fail. And I finish where Marco Ure had finished the last time. He asked the question, how do we ensure that we don't lose more lives? And the answer is simple. If we show up in large numbers, we will not lose any lives because 1 million people cannot be shot at. 1 million people can march into State House and Ruto will be nowhere to be seen. 1 million people is a huge number. So our security is in our numbers. So basically, I'm trying to emphasize that we should do whatever we have to do to mobilize electronically using our social media handles, physically, and whatever way, so that we get these numbers and then we can remove these guys from power. Then we can be able to restructure and overhaul our state. I land there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terry. And so as we proceed, there's somebody who's joined the speaker. He is in Asia, and so the time the time zone it's late. So I will let him go on. Deborah, I see that you dropped. The Kikombe, go on. Then we proceed to a citizen of Ghana, then Jerotich. Dr. Mkawasi, Neto, and Lady Justice in that order. Professor Migai, should you want to chime in at any time, just let us know. Becky Kombe, over to you. I think he might be sleeping. The Kikombe, going once, twice. Citizen, yes. Okay, Citizen, go on, and then I check on the Kikombe if he is able to speak. But please take 2 minutes so that we can have other speakers come on board. Citizen?
You call me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Kindly proceed.
thank you very much. Thanks to the organizers, Marge and Hillary. Greetings to my brothers and sisters of Kenya. I'm a brother Pan-Africanist from Ghana. You guys are doing great. All I can do is pray for you and encourage you. I've been listening and agonizing with you since the beginning of the revolt. I have said this over and over. You are doing this with the support of all of Africa, the youth of Africa, the old people of Africa, because, like in Kenya, nothing seems to be working almost across the whole continent. But my concern right now, and a lot of people have also said the same thing, what is the end game? What will your success look like? You know, for a revolution to be leaderless, tribeless, and pervasive is a blessing. However, as gradual progress is gained, there has to be some structure to finish the job. The reasons for the disgust and the dissatisfaction are clear and the same across Africa. Joblessness, corruption, overborrowing, importation, taxation without representation, political class, upheaval, and impunity. Now, Professor, what's his name? Miguna has really said a lot of important things philosophically and practically. You know, since independence, colonialism was the first thing that we had to fight against, but before that was slavery. So Africans have had the wrong mindset. And if you don't have the right mindset, it becomes very, very difficult to progress. We are the largest continent in terms of land mass and also the richest in terms of mineral resources. But in terms of finances and economics, we are the poorest. So to me, something is wrong. But I want to encourage you to continue what you're doing. But at some point, as I've said, you have to try to find some structure which will calculate the objectives of the revolution and how to get the objectives implemented. Because if it continues to be amorphous, then it becomes very difficult and you give armor to the people you're trying to remove to regroup, to strategize. And so long as they have control of the security services and the armed services, it becomes very difficult. So thank you for letting me speak. I wish you well. Godspeed. The whole of Africa is behind you. Win for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Citizen, for your contribution and also for keeping the time. Kingsman, I see you wanted to say something before Jerotich proceeds. Kingsman? Okay.
He's having some network issues. Yeah, Jerotich is here, Mkwasi is here. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Yes, Marge, who is next?
Jerotich, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Revolutionary Patriots. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Mine is going to be very brief because a lot of what I was thinking about and mulling over since our last session has been covered. And mine is really, once again, a rallying call and a strong encouragement. First and foremost, I want us never to forget the 60 young men and women who have been killed. You know, we have a regime that is shameless. And I always know that that the public is the private is public and the personal is political. And what we see in this particular regime, publicly and politically, is a manifestation of how Ruto and his cabal behave privately and personally. This is why the tears of the mothers and the fathers will never land. Justice and restitution will have to be demanded, and it will have to be exacted. This flying, as Boniface Mwangi had said once, this flying has now been replaced with lying. And the propaganda caravans that are in full swing around the coast and different parts of the country shows me that this regime believes that it is systematically besting us. And ours is to remind ourselves that we will not be bested by this regime. Nane Nane, in my opinion, should be the second and critical turning point following the 25th of June. And many of us have already said that during this space. However, we must not leave this to Gen Z to mobilize. Gen Zote, as Professor Kibwana said, and I've seen it floating around and I've started using it in my tweets, Gen Zote must step in, all of us. And Dr. Miguna has regularly reminded us that this is not a revolution for Gen Z. It is mobilized and has been galvanized by Gen Z, but this is Gen Zote. I was actually speaking to a very fearless, incisive, and influential Gen Z the other day who was saying that they have at least 25 dependents who are relying on them for school fees and all manner of other financial requirements. And as I was listening to this person, I said, are we going to wear our Gen Z down, praising them for their valor and willingness to die for all of us? We will then be no different than this regime that is also outweighting Gen Z. Are we waiting for Casmuel to speak himself hoarse until he's bullied off the TV screens, which he wasn't? And congratulations, Casmuel, for standing your ground yesterday. We need, as Gen Zote, to step up and step out. We should no longer be worried about, oh, are we usurping? Are we taking over? Are we managing? No, this is all of us. This is our future. We need to mobilize fearlessly, and we need to figure out who is it that we're able to rally. I want to, for example, focus on the mothers. I'm the mother of Gen Zs. I have been on the streets with my sons, and I shudder to imagine how I would feel if something happened to them. So why should any other mother have to experience this level of pain? Let's think Freedom Corner. Let's think about what happened 34 years ago. There are lessons to be learned when mothers came out. Now, that might be my rallying point and my entry point, but we're talking about mothers, fathers, siblings, everybody, Gen Zote. We need, for example, as mothers, a mom squad, a Gen Zote mom squad, a contingent that will come out and say, enough is enough. You're not shooting another one of our children while we are all here fighting for a better Kenya. And as a prophet said earlier on, this air, land, and sea attacks, I love this. This simultaneity of action is what we need. It should be non-linear, but it should be incisive and focused on the end game. And that end game must be singular in our minds, which is Ruto must go. And as everybody has said, Ruto must go is emblematic of everything Ruto is. Uhuruism, Rutoism, that will come to an end, and we're going to demand it, but we can only now move to the next level of action if we are all together. And that is my rallying call. That is what I want to encourage us to be focused on. How are we going to make it 800,000 people, 1 million people, 2 million people? Who are we going to bring to the streets? This is not about wearing t-shirts that look the same and so on and so forth. It's about saying we are taking to the streets in numbers, in great numbers. No sloganism and sloganeering. We know that what we are saying. So please let us be encouraged. It's lovely to have these spaces because we can think and overthink, and then we get into analysis paralysis and say, are we really going to make it? And as we see the regime moving around, mocking us and trying to demoralize us, it is possible on the ground to just feel, we are tired. But let us not be tired, because this revolution is ours to win, and we will win it. Thank you so much, all of you, and viva, and let's keep doing this. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerotich, for your submission. We'll move to Mkawasi and then Neto. And if there's somebody speaking, although the speaker panel speaking more than 2 minutes, do not feel discriminated against. Those are our invited guests. So we're still going to add you to the panel. Do not feel discouraged. Mkawasi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Madge. I hope you can hear me clearly. Uh, I'm
Yes, kindly proceed.
I'm
Yes.
going to say something brief about the sanctity of human life because I feel it is central to what we are doing. Um, I mean, every time we say Ruto must go, a lot of people have already mentioned that's about a whole more than one human being. So we're not uprooting a regime; we're uprooting a system. The regime is like a branch, and the system is like the tree. And we have to think that this is a system that goes way back since its independence. The first regime, when it took over from colonial authority, and that came into power through massacre, stealing, governance, taking of land. And that culture went on from one regime to the other. Human life became an inconvenience to those in power because human life were people with a moral sense who stood up for themselves against what that system was doing. And so that is where the beginning of the indignity started. People's lands were stolen and given as gifts to British royals. I know this because I come from such a place. Imagine a community losing the land it uses to hunt and farm, land they use to feed their children and their families, to trade with each other. Land allowed our communities to prosper through very smooth local systems. And we didn't need British laws to tell us know how to adjudicate our lands. But because of the power of foreign empires, entire communities became landless. And I'm mentioning this history because I want to show you the roots of the decay that now haunts us. And these are the roots we're saying we want to get rid of. Every time someone says, stop saying Ruto must go, why is it about one person? You tell them there's a whole history that goes into uprooting a system. Independence should have turned these means of achieving prosperity back to the people. But we know what happened. Our first government continued to uphold the same heartless systems from the colonial regime. Whatever was achieved in Kenya made no sense. There's just a veneer of modern development that sits on this very same system. There is absolutely no reason why we have wealthy neighborhoods on one side and sprawling slums right next to where millions live in insufferable indignity. And I'm sorry, I don't use euphemisms like informal settlements, especially when we need to rip the band aid off the cancer. We call out the indignity of our fellow human beings the same way that we need to call out the indignity everywhere else. And this indignity is living in conditions that are just ugly eyesores with putrid sanitation, suffocating stench, hunger. Man, you know it. You guys, you either lived here or you passed through these places. And we can't sanitize them. We can't give them this feminisms, nice names. We call it what it is. And apathy becomes a thing that people have to live through because they've just lost the strength to keep screaming out. So we must really shout. We must shout out loud this idea of uprooting a rotten system and upholding human dignity. It should never ever be a normal thing to see a human being, a person sprawling in the gutter and passing out, and then we just pass them by. And I'm saying this because this is the kind of mentality that also goes into someone was thrown away and they're forgotten. Someone was found in a mortuary and very soon we forget. The people who were found in a quarry, okay, we fight. And then at some particular point, people are hoping that we forget. Let us never get into the place of forgetting the sanctity of human life. This has to be central every time we're talking about uprooting the system. And we have to keep on connecting this decay of the system to the heartlessness of individuals who take power in Kenya. Now, why is it that protecting of human dignity is in the Constitution? Because it really is at the root of a clean democracy. It's right there. Again, I say, like I said it last time, Article 28, all people have inherent dignity and the right to have that dignity respected and protected. How come we have that in the constitutions? How come we have that? How come we don't fight for it and withhold it every single time? And I did hear Dr. Miguna talk about when we appear in millions, that protects us from being killed. Yes, numbers will protect us. But at the root of it, we have a moral right to plant and inculcate a culture of human dignity and protecting the sanctity and value of every human life in Kenya. Just to wind up, I know a lot is going on in the background. I do get a lot of information, and whatever ideas and contributions we have, we're making sure that on the ground, you guys get it to the best of our ability. We are active. My hope is for all the disparate groups in the uprising to find a common path and get ready to plant that new and clean system, because we need that clean system. You all want the same things. We want the same things. I love that Gen Zetu thing. We're all together. Gen Zote. Gen Zetu pia sio. So let's
Yes,
all get it together. Let's all get that together. There is, I'll say this again, because as it keeps on building up, I know individualism will creep in. There's just no room for individuals to play politics as usual, jumping from one political cartel to another. There's just no room to try to find your slice of bread and butter it. You know, lives will be lost, limbs will be broken. Hey, stand bold, stay strong, stay ready. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Thanks, because I just dropped. For those who are asking if they're being removed from the space, that's not the case. There's a technical issue going on. I've just dropped moments ago, and Hillary added me back. So thanks so much, Dr. for your ever motivating speeches. We really appreciate your presence. We appreciate you coming on board, and we feel motivated every time you speak. Thanks again for that. Neto, over to you.
Marge, I think before Neto goes, I think you dropped.
Chime in. Don't wait for us to cue you in. Just open your mic or raise your hand. We'll see that and let you in. Yeah. Neto.
Thank you very much, Marge. Thank you, Hillary, and Dr. Miguna and Kasmal, who are the key speakers this evening. Mine is to laud the efforts that have been done by the Gen Z over the past couple of weeks. And I really think that we are moving towards some very interesting points of convergence. And I know, listening to the speakers this evening, Jerotich, Professor Kibwana, and Benji, I think we're moving to the level where I think, the first wave of these protests, if I should call it that, was then Gen Z led, which is the real Gen Z. But now looks like the second wave of this protest is going to be a Gen Zote protest, which I think is a very good point of finding convergence. So really, I think the experiences of the yesteryears, of the 90s, 2010s, coming to the fore with the Gen Z, the real Gen Z leading, I think we're really, really going to be moving forward in a good direction. I am in support of Nane Nane, and just like every other speaker has said, the more numbers we get into Nairobi, the better it will be for us. So I really think that let's do the very best for Nane Nane, and let's make it count. But even as we do that, we must always remember that status quo is always going to fight back. And there are always people who are hanging around to feed status quo with oxygen, even when they're on the deathbed. So we must be very cautious, and we shall never be discouraged. The fact that status quo is being given oxygen, that's characteristic of all struggles. So really, it's just part of the many things that must happen. But I really think we must keep our eyes on the goal. And that leads me to my second point. When we say Ruto must go, I really think that that's the overarching broad objective. I think it's incumbent upon us and the organizers, those who sit down to draw these things. We must break down Ruto must go into its lowest common denominator. We must break down what Ruto must go looks like, and what are the practical steps or the practical pathways towards Ruto must go, so that you look I had Tony say, this is war. And if we broke down the Ruto must go war into small battlefields, small battles that we must win as we move by, it will then help us, not to get discouraged, because part of the problems that we had was the lull. Finance bill was not assented to, it was withdrawn, then there was a lull. What next? So there needs to be a continuum of activities that helps us towards Ruto must go, so that each milestone then is part of circumventing the various military objectives towards our very goal of Ruto must go. That's the second thing I wanted to say. The third thing I like to say, even though we look forward towards Sabasaba, there are moments when you can really test something. Parliament in its indignity and this particular regime in its defiance and recalcitrance has already taken to the fore the vetting process of the various cabinet secretaries over the next couple of weeks. I really think that there's opportunity, there are three opportunities to do something there. During the approval hearings at the mini chambers of parliament, we really, really need to accost this particular regime. There's also the chance when, in case parliament is too hell-bent in approving these names, there's also that day, and it's going to happen in the next couple of days. And the third day, of course, is when these people move to State House to be sworn in. I really think that we must try to test our military, our military organizing in terms of those instances, even as we walk towards a Nane Nane. Nane Nane, in my view, needs to be good, big, but it needs to be part of circumventing issues around our military objective in terms of what are we testing on Nane Nane in terms of these big things, in terms of breaking the Ruto must go chunk and sending him home. The fourth thing that I'd like to say, which is what everyone else is conversing, which is, I think, is a good point, but I think it's a moot point, because all of us are agreeable to the fact that Kenya needs to be run on the basis of constitutionalism and rule of law. And the drafters of the Kenya Constitution 2010, I think, did an impeccable job in terms of trying to sort out Kenya's problems and try to write it all in the Constitution. So I think the pathway in terms of the Kenya that we want, we really, really already in the Constitution. For example, if you looked at the current cabinet, it goes against the provisions of Article 73 and Article 75. Really, it's supposed to be a cabinet. Leadership is supposed to be based on meritocracy and, not nepotistic. It's supposed to be broad-based, face of Kenya. That is already lacking this particular cabinet. So that the issues that the Constitution spoke about is already in existence. So in terms of the Kenya that we envisage, I really think is already there. But I'd like us to also take something, which is what I think Professor Kibuta said. I have seen an attempt by the people who are supporting the status quo to try and speak in the manner of they want to an opening of the constitution currently. I think I'd like to say it is fairly dangerous. Because with ODM joining UDA, it is good to point out that they have a super majority, and they have a super majority if they added with their numbers in ANC and Ford Kenya, so they can actually make a parliamentary constitutional amendment. So we must then guard against any conversation right now that is going to be talking towards constitutional amendments, because they have the numbers. So we must really then ensure that we stamp our feet in a way that they do not even attempt to go that way, even before we remove this particular regime. Lastly, I think on the 8th and moving forward, we must stretch the forces and this regime very thin. The more we stretch them, the more thin we stretch them, the easier it is for us to gain victory. We're able to do that in our numbers. We're able to do that in our organizing. That's why I'd like to appeal that let us, as much as we can, have central coordinated organizing. Those Gen Zs and everyone else who's listening to me who's in charge of this organizing, let us at least, as much as we can, close ranks in terms of coordination. We can decentralize the intervention. We can decentralize the execution. But as much as possible, let us be of the same mind in terms of the coordination towards 8th, and then decentralize the interventions, decentralize the implementation. I thank you very much, and I look forward to a day when we can have the Kenya we want, and we, the people, will be victorious and implementing the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to listening to more thoughts. God bless Kenya.
Thank you so much, Neto. Am I still audible?
Yes, Marge, I can hear you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I just wanted to say, Hilary, I'm having technical issues. I'm not able to add people, so I will exit and come back. But
All right. Who's
yes,
coming? The rotation coming?
no. So just a moment. Let me queue and then I get out. So those I'm struggling. Deborah, I'm struggling to add you, and also Mwangi. Mwangi has been waiting for 4 hours. I'm just struggling to add them. I'm gonna do that in a few. As I go, let's queue in Lady Justice, then Ruby, And then after that, Caswell and Miguna can chime in. Meanwhile, don't forget to build the network. We're following each other. I'm going to just exit and sort myself out and come back. Over to you, Lady Justice.
Thank you, Hilary, Marge, Kingsman, and all the speakers. I would just love to add on to something that I've noticed for the past 3 weeks since we started hosting such a space. Every week we host a space, there are other conflicting spaces being held. And what that means is that most of the time they don't see the Gen Z here. And what that means is that on a daily basis, they have their own spaces that they're hosting. Like right now, I know the Gen Zs are raising funds in their Mchanga in preparation for the Nani Nani, but most of us might not know about that. So my only plea is let's find a way of how we can bring the members of the movement into our conversations. I know Casmol is here, but it might be very difficult because there are other rooms running. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about is the matter of media and how to address it. Like the truth is, on a daily basis, there's something being covered by the media and it's just being thrown down our throats. And uh, I wonder if having a strategy amongst ourselves as members of the movements in regards to literally not sharing anything that is not related to Ruto Must Go and focusing on the subject. That's my submission. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you, Lady Justice, for that. Who's coming next, Ruby?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hillary and Marge, for holding this space. I tell you, this Gen Z thing and this revolution has made me to come on X. I'm not an X person. Anyway, I'll be very quick. One thing I've noticed, and somebody brought it on X, is that, excuse me, each time there's a mandamano going on in downtown in CBD, the police goes to the slum areas and literally beating them up and like creating chaos in the slum areas. As we saw, one lady was holding a baby. They were being tear gassed in the slum areas. And also, like when she came out with the baby, there was gun. And I think this trend is a trend that is intentional by the government to kind of make people in the slum areas, because we know that each time there's manamano, there's more people actually in the slums that are coming out than the middle class, or rather the upper middle class. So the government is really using this to turn people of the slum areas against each other, because now they're going to start looking at each other like, hey, you are out to go to mandamano, meaning that we're going to get invasion at night with the police. And people might start saying like, you are not going, or you are the one bringing trouble. If you go in mandamano, you are the one bringing trouble. And that something might come up. And I'm wondering how the people, especially the vulnerable women in the slum areas, can be protected while the manamano is going on. And another thing I just want to add is I think this progress that's being done really well right now, because when there is chaos, I saw one MP or one CS saying that each time there's mandamano, there's no tourism that is coming in the country. And for the fact, Ruto hasn't left because he doesn't even know if he'll come back. So something is going on, and Ruto is back on the top of the vehicle. So as the people here, I think in the diaspora, I'm in to push in or to do whatever we can. I think we also have to create awareness here. If there is mandamano going on in your area, I think we need to also create some noise here. If Nani Nani is happening in Kenya, let's create our Nani Nani here and show up and make it loud so that the noise can be louder, so that Ruto can get the message and the whole world can get the message. Because right now, the legitimacy of Ruto is kind of watering down in wherever, because I know he really like to please the Western countries or Europe, wherever he goes. So yeah, so that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Hilary, I hope you can hear me now. Okay, great. So as we continue, Ruby, you brought in a very important point. At the moment, I'm really avoiding watching the Kenyan news, and especially when the president is speaking. I would, if I didn't know better, I would think he's trying to gaslight. But I would like to have a statement on because we had attacks in Zimmerman, but I have a feeling that it was not followed up correctly. If it was, then it would be good if we can have a statement on that. I think, General, as you chime in later, you can just share a few on that. Casmel, are you ready to speak, or shall we chime in another speaker before General takes over? Yeah.
I'm listening and just taking the insights. But just I'd love to contribute on people who feel like there's maybe an absence of Gen Z in such spaces. There never is truly an absence, because the essence of being in multiple spaces is for people to get knowledge, because once people are in a space, they're not necessarily confined to that space. There are going to be tweets and thought-provoking tweets that arise from these spaces, and that way we can cross-pollinate or diffuse the wisdom from the various spaces. So for me, spaces have never been about now 20 people. The most insightful spaces of action arise from that. So I feel like whenever you come onto these spaces, are active and giving us ideas that you feel these are areas which we could um we could
I think
as we
Casmel.
keep on listening and
Okay.
we keep right as we keep on listening as we keep
Okay, Casmel, we're not getting you clearly, but I've had the experience. Just a moment.
we
I've
would
had the experience that when I think months ago
we
when
will
Okia Umtata was speaking, he could be. Yes, just a moment.
benefit greatly in
I'll text him. Hilary, can you text him? Just a moment. I've had an experience that when months ago when Okia was speaking, somebody would tamper with his line. So if anyone is trying to tamper with Casmuel line, please just let him speak. Let's hope it's just a network issue. Casmuel, kindly proceed.
can you hear me now?
It's better, a little better. Just proceed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patriots. Thank you, Madge. Yeah, so I was saying, if you have any contributions that would enable us to make Nane Nane a reality, because a lot of people need insight, a lot of people need that that deeper angle, which a lot of you might have insight on. Please make that contribution, because that's the only other way we can be able to have these discussions and crystallize the ideas into functional ones. So that's what I would contribute for now. But I'm taking the insights and mulling over them, and I know I will be able to action on them and share them with friends, of course.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harry.
Thank you, Madge. Thank you, Madge. Thank you, Madge. I have heard everything everybody has said, but I would like to chime in with a few comments. Number one, Casmel is extremely correct. There is no way you would be able to know the age set groups of people who are participating at this or in this space to be able to say that the Gen Zs are not here. There is no specific space for Gen Zs. Gen Zs are in all the spaces, and we, patriots, are in all the spaces. Number two, what does success look like? I believe it is the citizen from Ghana or someplace who said that he would be interested to know how success would look like. Success to us are the things that Professor Kevuta Kibwana already illustrated. That we've been able to push illegitimate President Ruto to a corner, forced him to disband his so-called cabinet, which he reconstituted with mostly illegitimate, corrupt people. He is now going around the country pretending to be campaigning. And I understand in Mombasa, somebody texted me that he's meeting with what he calls Gen Zs there. So that's a desperate move. We have him on the run, so to speak. Those things that Professor Kivula Bwana said are what success looks like. We are moving towards the right direction. Ultimately, our success would be when we are able to remove this regime and the system and be able to transform it. We should not be forced or compelled to be able to tell anybody how that transformation is going to look like. But we've been here before, and we have said we will have a transitional system, a caretaker government that will organize fresh elections. And that election will lead to a new republic. People have said, and I think it is the citizen who said also, that instead of having this amorphous, leaderless organization, we should have something that probably is more organized. That's a trap. The problem is that the moment you give face to the leadership, which we don't have anyway, uh, the regime targets those people for infiltration, for bribery, for arrests or abductions, for torture, for death. And also, if, like happened in 2018, some of these so called leaders become opportunistic, like Raila Odinga did, he would then announce that he has dissolved the movement. We don't want to fall into that trap. We've been there before. So this is working perfectly well. Being leaderless, being tribeless, being organic, being formless is the best way because the regime does not know who to go to be able to dismantle the movement, and they can't. So I think if it works, let us not interfere with it. I like what NATO said, and I think we should focus close attention to this concrete steps that are being proposed. I think NATO is proposing that we galvanize as much as possible and interact with the regime during vetting, during swearing in, and any other occasion uh, that involves the regime trying to pretend like they now have the country together. I would have been happy if we had enough people to chant Ruto must go where he is at the coast. But I think we are getting there. Um, the last point is on Zimmerman, I was asked. Unfortunately, with the way Kenya is currently, there are only three ways you can get information out about anything that is happening. Number one, people who are there can take images and videos and be able to transmit that information virtually using social media so that we can get information, or send it to us so that we can get it out. We got videos which we released, but that's all we did. Number two, we have the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights, whose mandate, an independent constitutional body, whose mandate is to ensure that they protect all human rights of Kenyans and to be able to give out information where such rights are violated. Unfortunately, the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights is in its deathbed, almost being defunct. So we have not received any information from that commission. We have NGOs like social justice groups, including in Zimmerman and around that area. We have not seen any reports from them. We have Kenya National Coalition for Human Defenders. We have not received any report from them. The Law Society has been doing a great job, especially with the apprehended and abducted and then taken to court, those who have been taken to court. We have not seen any reports from them. Elements of the media, including independent journalists like John Alam Namu, have also been doing a great job in terms of being able to give us information. We have not seen any reports regarding Zimmerman. So as it is right now, we don't have reports of the injured. We don't have real reports of who, if any, died. And so we don't know. We are in darkness. The last point, what do we do to protect the slum dwellers, quote unquote? I don't want to use that word, dwellers, instead of residents, because they just happen to be poor people living in these poor conditions, who are attacked every time there are demonstrations. I have 3 comments to make on that. Number one, I don't believe it is our responsibility to do anything. The responsibility is that of the government to protect everyone. Our responsibility is to expose the government or the regime when they attack any Kenyan, whether they live in middle class areas, whether they live in the slums, whether they live in so-called middle class areas, so that the world and the country know what they are doing. So when we have the information, let us share it, let us expose the regime. But we don't have the power to stop them unless, as we were discussing, we have enough numbers in the millions, which we can't when they're doing this as night, when nobody expects them there. So the only thing we can do is to expose them. But the responsibility of protecting citizens is that of the regime in power. And we should not let them get away with it by saying somehow it is because of the demonstration that made them attack anybody. These people have been abducting and have been attacking people without demonstrations taking place. I will give an example of myself. I was abducted from my house. There was no demonstration. Rex was killed coming from work. There was no demonstration where he was. The gentleman who was dumped in a dam, I believe the student that was going to JKUAT, he was not in the CBD. He was arrested around JKUAT and dumped in a dam. There are many people who are abducted all over the country, some of whom were killed. So the demonstrations are not responsible for attacks against citizens. How we use language is important, because we should blame the regime when they do things against our citizens without implying that we are responsible for anything that has been done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terry. And at this point, I really, really would like to, get out an appeal to everyone in this space. We saw videos of people really crying for help, people under attack. But days later, actually the next day, I think, there was a political statement in the country, and these people have been forgotten. And we can't sadly say that, we're not having information. So while we continue to look for change, are we going to let down those who have probably been killed, those who have probably been injured? So please, as we leave this space, I would like to really request that everybody, especially those who live in those areas, try to find that information, try to share it, and so that we can have a concrete I wouldn't say report at this point, but it's pretty much sad if people are attacked that way, and then just a day after Raila has joined the government. I think it was a day or 2 days after. I'm really not sure at this point. I'm sorry, but we saw how the narrative changed. People focused on what had happened, but forgot about these victims. So please, let's improve on that point as we proceed to the next speaker. That's Liz, Anthony, and then Wakili. And so now we're opening up to other speakers. So please take 2 minutes each, and then more will be able to speak. Yeah, Dr. Mkawasi, please take a go before they proceed.
Okay, just quickly about a note on the people who disappeared or who seem to have been forgotten. I've been discussing this with another group about the importance of having a center of activity where you have a sort of a wall, a space, a place where you do not, you put the names of the people who've been abducted, those who've been killed, those who've been disappeared. And every day you have this gathering of people, this groundswell to make sure that whatever is done, we do not forget that. And that is part of that entrenching the sanctity and value of every human life, because there's no democracy that is going to to be new, to have new roots, if we don't have this sense of sanctity. And really that really important point that Miguna talked about, uh, this is also another thing that needs to go into action, and can go into action immediately. The delegitimizing of an already illegitimate government, so that everything the government does or says, there is a process of delegitimizing what they say, rejecting the regime, decisions made by the government appointees, just a constant public negation of the choices that the regime makes, because this has to be something constant. They are playing psyops, they're playing games with your minds that make us want to forget what is going on. In reverse, there has to be a process of illegitimizing everything that the government does. And in that way, we are able to kind of win that psyop war. There are other things that I don't know if it's in this forum or a different forum that we can share, so that we make sure that what is put out there, we actually have the weapons, the wherewithal to attack what the government puts out against protesters. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. And I see Jerotich is raising her hand. Jerotich, you're next. I have a question as we proceed to Jerotich. I'm having some concerns. I know that the word massacre, there's a way it is described, but at the same time, one cannot wait for that description when things are happening. So there are past events or attacks where people have said there was a massacre. And then, of course, the regime came out and said there wasn't a massacre. So, Dr. Kawasi, the last time you were speaking about propaganda, how can we help to have communication, to have people communicate, or probably just use words? I don't want to describe for people the words that they're using, but because you see, if we're being told, we say there's a massacre, of course, at that point when we're saying it, we don't have the evidence. And the other person who can bring the evidence can also not bring the evidence as we expected. Then we're told there was no massacre. But if there is in future even a massacre, it's going to be declared like just, the past times that people say there was one. How do we navigate around that area, so that at least important events that needs to be shared out in a way that propaganda doesn't push it to the negative and of course bury it completely? Either Dr. or Jerotich. Yeah.
May I quickly say that in an uprising, you don't worry about the legalese of the terminology you're using. So because there is a legal definition of a massacre. So if we know 2, 3, 4 people have been killed, that to us ought to be as if 1,000 people have been killed. And what we want to do about it is take the names of those 4, those 10, those 20, whatever number it is, take their names and never drop that baton of continuing to hammer this person was killed, this person was disappeared, this person was kidnapped, and keep drumming it up. So formless as the uprising is, there needs to be a center of activity, be it something like what happened at Freedom Corner or wherever it is that people on the ground are going to decide. And that center of activity is going to have that space where you have those names of people, and their journalists will begin to come and they will say this number of people died. So we shouldn't worry about the legalese of how to define massacres, because that's just going to be a legal thing. If it's 2 people, that's 2 people too many. If we are entrenching a culture of the value of every single human life, 1 person ought to be as if 1 million people have died. And we should never let the government forget that. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Mark,
Jerotich, yes?
Mark, if you can allow Anthony Moredi to go, he has been here for so long. I think for the last 2 hours, he has been raising his hand and we haven't been giving him the mic.
No, he's been dropping. Jerotich, take a go, and then Anthony.
Thank you very much, Maj. I also know that you were referring perhaps to the early days after the 25th and talking about Githurai and some of the conflicting reports. And I do agree with Mkawasi that at the end of the day, we have to call it what it is. But where I hear you're coming from is in those early days with the conflicting reports and information where there were 200 plus killed and so on and so forth, there was an opportunity at that point in time for the regime to try and rubbish or push back on our assertions. But that said, I think we have already reached a point where we can shout as loudly and as often as we need to. So I echo and second what Kawasi has said in that regard. Now, what I wanted us to also remember is that even as we speak, and always in memoriam and in the name of those who have been killed by this regime, I want us to remember also that there are very many young people who have continuing court cases. And this is sometimes something that we tend to forget. I know, for example, on the 30th, which is on Tuesday, there's 109 who will be appearing again before a magistrate. These are the ones who are charged with being drunk and disorderly. There are probably hundreds upon hundreds of our young people who are now facing lengthy, laborious misuse of the so-called justice system, the injustice system. And they're going to continue to be in these slow turning wheels that exact and extract resources from them. And I just wanted us to make sure that even as we are creating this wall and understanding from a situation room perspective what is actually going on, that we bear in mind those who are now caught up in the jaws of this injustice, and see where else we can continue to input and support. And my hats off to the Law Society of Kenya pro bono lawyers, who are the ones who are always at night in Central Police Station, JKIA, Shauri Moyo, looking for those who have been arrested. And without this team of pro bono lawyers, many of our young people would be languishing, as some of them still are. So I really wanted us to remember that. And as I really underscore the idea of bringing more mothers into this space, as a tactic to get as many segments of the population involved, I just want to once again express my disgust at the fact that Parliament actually has approved the continued funding of the First Lady and the Second Lady's offices. The Second Lady, who talks about empowering the boy child, where is she here? Where is Mama Rachel Ruto? We should not even call her Mama. Where is Rachel Ruto? What is she doing? How are these women who are taking away from our limited and meager resources sitting back and watching our children, young people, be killed day in, day out? This is, like I said, such a heartless regime. And as we call people out, we need to call those officers out and say, we are completely not with, and we will never approve that kind of expenditure. Who are they, and why do they think they are entitled to these resources? And as mothers, shame on them, because they should have been the first ones to come out and push for reason, and not just hide behind their husbands and expect to continue to be funded so that you can have prayer circles and all kinds of other things that happen within these regimes, and using our taxpayers' monies. So as we rally mothers, it's also a way to call out and shame those same people who are sat at the very top, even the women legislators themselves, the female governors. And I'm not trying to just pick out women, but I'm just following the mother theme and say, where are you while all of these things are happening to the young people of this country? And so let us, in our own way, wherever we can, mobilize at the same time, call out, shame, push back, because all of this is going to come to an end. So really, as I go off again here, just to say, let's not forget our young people who still have court cases, and let us continue to support the Law Society of Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jerotich.
Maj, maybe before, just uh, um, to make a recap on what Jerotich has said, with what Parliament has just done, as you said, they have said no to scrapping off the fund for the that is the first and second ladies that is budget, but they had the guts of scrapping off the 10 billion that was meant for new employment of, I think, around 40,000 teachers. That they did away with. And then they were like, the police have been very supportive of this regime and making sure that we are in power. So what do? Give them 24 billion, or around 20 8 or 24 billion or something like that. So whatever, however how you look at it, because even there's a lady who spoke before who was talking about, I don't know, we need to sit down and vet this cabinet. I really don't think you can start saying that even they are worth looking at in terms of the Article 4, in terms of the integrity. They are not. And this is just about self-preservation. So there is no way you can start even saying that let's go around and try to vet this thing. And for me, I think the moment we talk about trying to discuss anything that Ruto is doing, then we are legitimizing his government. So if it is the Ruto out, that should be the main theme of whatever we are doing. Let's not diverge into who he has appointed this person, he's doing this, this, and that, and that. Because when we do that, then we are legitimizing his government. And we have seen the events of the last 1 week is that these are political game that they are playing, whereby it is about self-preservation. That now this is a team of, we are no longer now opposition and people in government. It is about a political class that has been here for the last 60, 40, 30 years, and they have to ensure that they survive. Political survival by all means possible. So, Anthony, yes, you can go. And Jeroti, thank you for that point.
Thank you very
Anthony,
much.
sorry.
Yes, hello.
Anthony, give me a
Thank you
second.
very. Okay.
Sorry.
I swear to God, I'm going to lose my line of thought. I've been having it from
Anthony,
seven.
kindly
But
proceed. Yeah.
anyways, it's okay.
Anthony?
I want to. Thank you. I want to agree with everything. Jared. I'm looking for her name. Say
Jerotit,
has
yes.
said. Yes, kindly, guys. As we discuss, and I want to echo what Samuel has said. We need to ask ourselves. As much as we say we don't need some sort of organization, today I was in a space where I literally had a young man break down into tears, talking about the young men who have died. We need to be so organized so that these men, because people are losing hope. And I think the authorities can feel it. People are losing hope. Young people are saying we are marching every Tuesday and Thursday, and we are being killed. Our colleagues are in cells. They feel left alone. If we are saying we are coming out on Nane Nane, let it be a unified Kenya out there. If we want to sit and insist, we do not need to organize ourselves. Samuel is doing a wonderful job on media, yes. But you need to ask yourself, why do the youth feel they can trust Samuel? Because we've trusted him. We believe that he will hold the cause of the group at heart. So as we organize ourselves, let us organize ourselves in this manner. Let us have a media team, a mobilization team, a messaging team. So these various teams work together to remove one message, because our messaging is flawed. And Samuel can attest to this. On one space, people are agitating for a very different thing from the other space. But we all agree in all those spaces that we are meeting on Nane Nane. When people meet on Nane Nane, because they are in different spaces and saying different things, there is confusion. In that confusion, people die, people lose legs, people end up in prison. Now, after Nane Nane has happened, and I co-host with Andrew Kibe, people come back into the spaces and tell us, tulikuwa huko na hata hatujui kunaenda aje. As I learned, every time you host these spaces, kindly have a balance. Say you are going to have 3 Gen Zs who will not move from the speakers panel, so that you get to understand what is happening in their mind. There's trauma beating these guys down. I am telling you guys, kindly hear from them more, because they are in the forefront. Hear from them more. Get to sift their ideas. Then give those people like Samuel support. When you send Samuel to media every day with this other young lady, and they're doing a wonderful job. But at some point, we must appreciate that many ideas make a better idea. Okay, yesterday I saw Kasama, they were doing a great job with the lady, but I felt one guy was working against them.
Yeah. Can we
Okay,
in the spirit
anyway,
in
those
the
are my
spirit of
points.
making
I'm
a
yielding.
balance, can we please stick to the 2 minutes as we open the panel? And I wanted to say that we're now opening the panel to more people. Let's take 2 minutes each so that we can speak. Daktari, I see you. I'm going to give you the mic in a few. Anthony, I would like to say we are Kenyans, we're all Kenyans, and we know what how our people behave. Sometimes there are people who are in these spaces for for followers, and they will not stay in one space. And so when you see them not here, some of them, I'm not saying everyone, some of them are looking for spaces whereby they can just go and get those followers. So we are adding everyone. Those who want to speak will speak, and we're doing a very good balancing there. But once again, thanks for chiming in. Daktari, go, and then we go to Karuki, Liz, and then Karuki. 2 minutes each. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Maj. I wanted to comment quickly because sometimes some of these things are lost when you have so many people speaking, and then a very important contribution get lost in the heat of the moment. So Anthony has made very important points, and I just wanted to briefly comment on them. Number one, Anthony, unfortunately, it's a free world and a free country. We can't force anybody to join anything. So normally we hold these spaces at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. On Sunday. And some people choose to hold theirs almost at the same time to disrupt this one. And unfortunately, some of those people work for the state, and there is nothing we can do about that. So you have to appreciate the fact that when you're fighting a state, and this is a fight, just like Tony correctly said, that's a war, and there are many battles in the course of war, there will be contradictions in the struggle itself. And these contradictions are normal. These setbacks are normal. The problems you are citing are normal. They will always happen because, as I said last week,